All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Palantir Weekly. This is episode number 151. We got a full house here. We have Amir, Arnie, Matt Money, and Garcia with myself today. Been a fun 2 weeks. We didn't do Palantir Weekly last week, but we are back. We got a lot to talk about. AIPCon recap, closing over $37, which I guess the stock just keeps going up forever, and that's what we get to enjoy. And some controversy around insider selling. So we got a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss. How's everybody doing?
Buenos dias.
Good. Yeah.
Amir, Arnie, my European brothers, are you guys awake?
As good as you can be doing at 5 a.m., I would say. I think great.
Buonanotte, I would say.
All right, so I want to start the conversation here with a general kind of raw thoughts on the past 2 weeks for Palantir. We had Carp speak. We had all these AIP presentations. We'll go into the nitty gritty of this stuff, but kind of your raw thoughts. What are you feeling? And then, I mean, we are officially in the S&P 500, closed at 37. Just general sentiment around how you're thinking about this company and this investment. Amir, to wake you up, we will start with you.
You want me to hit all those topics at the same time?
Yeah, well, the broader question is, well, how are you feeling about Palantir right now? It could be a short answer, a little bit long answer. Just
No, it's it feels good, not because of the things we're seeing in the short term per se, but more like because when I analyze the company and when I create models or when I value the business, I have specific expectations for the company, and they are stepping up and meeting up. They're meeting those expectations. So from that point of view, it feels good. It kind of reaffirms me that, well, I wasn't completely clueless when I looked at this company. So the vibe is good. Is that how the kids say it? The vibe is good. Very demure. Slave.
Caught a vibe.
first of all, why are you watching so much? How do you know what demure is? Like, that's a TikTok.
I have no idea. You know,
He's watching Gilmore Girls.
No. Okay, so the thing about Amir that no one knows on YouTube, his subscribers definitely don't know it, but Arnie and I know it, is this motherfucker watches at least 30 minutes of TikToks a day, and he's unapologetic about it.
Feeding the Chinese Communist Party algorithm.
Look,
And
guys,
he does stay up Chinese communism, and he enjoys it. He enjoys
when
it.
you get a girlfriend or wife, it comes with the package. You can't not have TikTok, you know. you need to
Why?
consume the
Why is a
memes.
girlfriend needed? Why does she make you watch TikTok?
Oh man, do you know how many notifications? I would show you my phone, but I'm using it to stream. It's like 28 TikToks for me to watch every morning. Start the day. Like,
So what? Hold on. What
Getting
happens when you
spam.
don't respond to it? Does she get mad if you missed one of the?
it's like,
TikToks?
oh, did you watch those TikToks? I'm like, no. Oh man, you don't want that situation. Trust me. Happy wife, happy life, or what do you say over there in America?
I've been through that too. When a girlfriend is in the kitten loop, you will
Kitten
become part of kitten loop. Cats on Instagram, cats on TikTok, cats on everywhere. It's like, okay, have you seen my TikTok? Well, I'm actually studying Palantir. Have you seen my TikTok?
No, it is real. Like,
That is important.
it might sound funny to you guys, but this is real, and I'm sure many people can relate in the chat. Yeah. And the demure thing, I don't know what that means, but I saw a pastor in Sweden, some teens goaded him into selling the church or whatever that he works at, making an ad on TikTok. So he just goes around saying all these Gen Z slangs and terms. I'm like, I just picked it up from there. Thought it was funny.
And you brought it to Palantir Weekly, so thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so vibes good. Good. Okay. We're seeing confirmation of a lot of things we have been thinking for a long time. So it's not like they are performing over my expectations. They are meeting the expectations, and the expectations were not low. So that's great.
Okay, Garcia, how are you feeling about Palantir?
I feel great. I mean, it's been pretty awesome seeing the, just so many, new round of customers, who are presenting and, showing their passion, with the results that they're getting with Palantir. So, I mean, that with AIP, officially, so we'll be in the S&P on Monday morning, right? It basically happened after hours today.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait whenever they show the heat map for the S&P, be able to zoom in and see where Palantir's at, So I wonder what category they're going to be on. Are they going to be on information technology or
Good
like
point.
you know how they have the
They should make a new
subcategories?
category called winning and just put them under that. Like,
Like I love
Whenever the
I think it
sector
was-
shows up, you just see who is it? I don't remember who the hell the guy is. Sorry, sorry, Garcia, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no. I don't know if you guys saw that picture that Chaos Perez he shared. It's like the S&P and it's just a black hole in the middle and it just says Palantir. Like that's how I want it to show up every time. I want to have like a little edit, to be able to do that every time. But I mean, all in all, I mean, it just feels great. I mean, I'm just man, I thought it would be hard to be holding on to the shares at these levels. Like when I was holding it in the 20s, I was thinking, man, if it hits the 30s, the 40s, I wonder if I'll start getting the itch to diversify more. Like I mean, not at all. Like I know there's gonna be downturns. There's gonna be waves where there might be pullbacks, and everyone's gonna start saying, "Oh my gosh, you should have diversified more." But I mean, I'm seeing 5 years ahead, and I'm just thinking, like, dude, like, there's no way I want to get off this ride so soon. I mean, I kind of feel like I wonder if this is how the early Tesla investors felt when they were buying before getting into the S&P, accumulating shares in Tesla and, increasing their position. So for me, I'm just, hey, so far it's been a winner. They're kicking ass. They're going to keep winning. So I'm just going to keep holding on. Like I'm not going to overthink it. So
let me ask you one more question, Garcia, because your situation is actually really interesting, and I think it is emblematic of a lot of other people's situation. You've held on to Palantir pretty much all year, and your portfolio, which you share publicly, Garcia's Twitter is in the chat, went from basically 60,000 ish to 170, and that's just incredible. It's like I think a lot of times we forget most people in the world. Particularly in America, they have barely $500 to pay for bills, and you're sitting on 170. And the majority of that came from these Palantir shares at $20. Yeah. I know you also think, hey, probably we'll talk about valuation, but the valuation is getting a little up there. How are you thinking when you're sitting on all these gains that is constructed the majority of your portfolio? Are you scared at all of losing these if we get a dip, or are you kind of just like, well, I'm here for the ride and we'll just play it out for the next 10 years?
Yeah, and it's mostly that. It's mostly that I am here for the ride, but thankfully because of the strategy as far as selling covered calls, cash secured puts that I've been learning. I mean, I started learning it from TJ watching his lives, but after doing it myself, because it all has to do with like how comfortable you get to doing it yourself, not copying somebody's trade. Like, oh, I saw TJ do this, I'm gonna copy that trade, and oh, he sold now, okay, I'm gonna sell now. Oh, he bought now, I'm gonna buy now. That's kind of a recipe for disaster, because what happens when they stop posting or they go on vacation and you got options expiring that week? What are you going to do? Or what happens when Palantir pops 20% overnight and you're holding covered calls? So for me, I've been selling calls and puts all year. And the fact that I'm still holding on to every single share
means you know how to fucking manage those calls and puts.
I've been fucking managing them. I mean, I'm not gonna pat myself on the back too hard, but I mean, everybody who's been screaming and yelling that, oh, good luck getting your shares called away, they're gonna get called away tomorrow. It's like, if you guys knew how to roll, I mean, you wouldn't really get into this problem. So so I am along for the ride, but I am gonna be making money on the ups and downs along the way, in a responsible manner. And by that, I mean, I'm not going to be selling it on my entire position. I'm not going to get over leveraged. I'm going to do it in, 10, 20% of the portfolio and just kind of manage that in the trades.
You even bought some puts just for some protection, right? These are sort of responsible things.
And I got rid of them. Yeah. And I lost like maybe like 20, 30% on them. And I got rid of them earlier today before even kept running up. But overall, I'm not going to be overthinking it and thinking that I'm smarter than the market. Like, oh, I think it's going to go up tomorrow, I'm going to start buying calls. Like I haven't played that game this year, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to do
Just
it.
for curiosity, have you tried comparing this great output that you achieved compared with, okay, let's say if I just bought the shares and did nothing?
Yeah. And that's something that I do maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, is I'll kind of look at, okay, what has Palantir done year to date? What am I doing year to date? But in my case, I went all in on February 4th, basically the day before their earnings.
Literally
that they had the big move.
the day before.
So that's kind of the benchmark that I start as far as, okay, ever since I went all in Palantir, am I outperforming the underlying. Because if I'm not, then I'm just wasting a bunch of time trying to do all these things. And if I'm underperforming, then I might as well just stop doing everything, just hold it and go to sleep and wake up in 10 years, and I would be better off there. But I am outperforming it by 20%, I think, so far, 25%. So that's basically all money that I've used to buy more shares. So every amount of every dollar I get goes to buy more shares.
No, I asked because I had an experiment last year with covered calls, and I realized, okay, I did okay, but the reality is, if those shares were just kept there, I would have done much better. Essentially,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I wasted a lot of mental energy for
Yeah.
nothing. Thankfully, it was just the small account I'm using to learning this stuff. But if it was like a bigger account, I would have felt pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Dude, definitely. And I'm doing both, selling puts and selling calls in different time frames, but it's doing both together. It's what's been helping out a lot.
Matt, your raw thoughts on Palantir?
It's fun. I think it's been really exciting. I would say not expected to get up to the $36, $37 range. And, it makes me think, because I still have to be writing that Seeking Alpha write-up. And luckily I waited until now rather than I guess, the S&P 500 news, because I don't know. I honestly thought it was a 50-50 shot. So I will say it was absolutely phenomenal seeing you at AIPCon last week. You did an absolutely phenomenal job representing the community. The clips coming out of it were absolutely hilarious. I'm glad you got to meet some of my cohorts. Not sure if you were able to meet more of them after you and I texted back and forth, but cool to be able to see some of the great opportunities that are out there from a lot of different companies. And man, I think it's just the beginning. I mean, I feel, just to be bluntly honest to everybody in here, I do foresee a pullback in the short to medium term, but long term, man, well, medium term is probably too long, but in the long term, man, like, this company is everything that I thought it was and more. And it makes me feel really validated inside to know that you were able to see a great opportunity and work on a great opportunity 8 years ago or so when I first got involved with the software, and it to grow into what I've seen today at peak $80 billion market cap, which is, phenomenal. It's just really inspiring, and everything that I continue to see is more and more inspiring. And I feel like a lot of people have yet to truly realize the future that's coming with Warp Speed and many of the other opportunities coming down the pipeline, even the healthcare app that they just released as well, or operating system they just released as well. I'm really curious to see where that goes.
Arnie, your raw thoughts on Palantir right now?
I think my feeling of Palantir right now could be synthesized of this post that I shared the other week. This is how Palantir is actually right now. Like, oh, Palantir is overvalued. Yeah, it's overvalued. It can't keep going up. And every effing time we see Palantir looking at us, it's like, you know what? Okay, let's keep running. And apparently, given the success of this post that was one of my best performing posts, it seems like, okay, this sentiment seems quite spread. And I was
That's
surprised.
a top signal,
I was surprised by the response of Garcia, because I was also feeling, maybe it was even harder to hold like last year, 2 years ago, when stuff were not going in this way. And what I mean with that is not only the stock price, but this David Goggins style that Palantir is having is not only related to the stock, is literally related also to the business. Like, every time that we started thinking, there's a bit of disappearance on this side, on the government side, boom, like a contract. Oh, long time they're not dropping any new deal on the commercial side. Boom, drop. Boom, drop. So it's literally, we are dealing now with another beast compared with last year, 2 years ago, but the DNA was already there. So just a little thank you to all of us that we had the opportunity to think a lot, to discuss a lot, to realize, oh, like this is not just another Snowflake, another Roku, another BS company, but we were able to identify that DNA that is now producing the results after some time. And it's quite funny to see very big guys like Puru on X, say, like 2 years ago, saying, oh, no, you know what? This management is not really knowing what they're doing. I'm selling August 2022. And now he's sort of bragging, oh, Palantir, by the way, is a leader in our portfolio. It's like, what?
Yeah, for those that don't know who Arnie's talking about, Puru Saxena, he's some dude from Hong Kong who's like just like constantly tweeting about anything, and he's running some firm and he's trying to collect more money under it. So in 2022, he was just hate tweet after hate tweet about Palantir. They couldn't get their shit together, all that stuff, which is, yeah, it was all those criticisms were true, but you have to kind of see beyond the horizon to make the investment. And now 3 years later, as it ramped up, now it's like, well, Palantir is part of our portfolio. So I think we've seen this massive media shift over the past couple of obviously years, but really past couple months. And it's just been exciting to see everything happen. We had Garcia on a Wall Street Journal article as well, talking about retail investors in Palantir. It's one of the coolest stories this year, if not the coolest story this year. I mean, NVIDIA is a cool story. Yeah, NVIDIA is a cool story, and how it's performed has been a cool story this year. But everyone kind of knew by the end of 2023, all right, this NVIDIA thing was coming. And then I don't think anyone expected it to be as big as it was, but it happened. But Palantir is only 20% away from outpacing NVIDIA. I don't know if that ends up happening, but Palantir's retail. NVIDIA is like these large institutions that are putting all this pressure and money, hyperscaler revenue behind GPUs. Palantir is like one guy with crazy hair and a bunch of retail investors that believed in them. And so that's why it's really fun. Okay. Speaking of that one guy with crazy hair, any last thoughts or?
Yes. You mentioned something related to the story of NVIDIA. And I came to a clip the other day that made me think. This guy was one of those guys that made a killing with the 2008 crisis. And in the interview, he mentioned something really interesting. Now I need to search for the clip, but essentially he said, during good times, people focus into stories. During bad times, people focus into balance sheet. And now we are in the story time, we are in a positive time. And we need to think, oh, what's the more interesting story that is out there? And I personally think Palantir is the most important and the most intriguing story so far, because it's a company that went from very bad results, like operationally speaking, gap, like a negative free cash flow, negative gap earnings. It was completely hated, and now is emerging as a phoenix, as Karp said. And now it is becoming recognized as an IL leader. But I think the NVIDIA story already at this point is like, okay, what's new? It's like, they're showing dominance. Now they just need to preserve that dominance. It's not an intriguing story any longer. So just wanted to.
I think it's a beautiful story on you don't know what you don't know. And I think it's a true stock market story in that respect, because I think a lot of people will be like, a company's not making money. It's GAAP profit. It's not making a GAAP profit. So therefore it's going to go bankrupt. And I think if you actually took the opportunity to look into the organization, even 18 months before it got to GAAP positive, you would have known the company is making cash flow. You would have known that the company had $1 to $2 billion on the balance sheet. You would have known that revenue is growing. You would have known that it is not only just growing, but it's growing strong. And so the indications were there even 18 months before you even had GAAP profitability. And I hope it's a lesson to people like Peru and many others out there that just judge a book by its potentially cover and don't let things plan out, because it was very obvious. I mean, in 2020, before you had access to the financials, it was a gamble, right? Who knows what the hell was actually going to happen? Yes, they released, I think, was it an S10 or what have you, before you actually purchased the direct listing shares. But after a couple quarters of growth and revenue and everything like that, with the Investor Day presentation that they put out in like September or August of 2020. If you took that opportunity and looked through it, and then even in 2021, 2022, you would have been able to recognize this company is headed towards profitability the next 18 to 24 months. And you would have been able to get in on a great opportunity. People that just wanted to fast tweet and, you know, didn't necessarily want to dive deep into the numbers themselves lost out on a great opportunity. And so I think people that have always been like maturing and trying to understand, take that as a lesson, especially if you're buying now at these higher prices, to recognize, don't judge a book by its cover, and really dive into the work and the balance sheets of these companies and the cash flow statements of these companies, because GAAP profitability isn't everything. You would have been able to tell that this company was churning out cash flow way before that. And it was evident to me. I was pounding the table. Amit was pounding the table before GAAP profitability. And it's nice to finally see the results really starting to pay off.
Yeah, and I think it helps with the new stocks. I mean, I know you are big on Rocket Lab, and I don't think they're profitable yet. And that's another classic case of, hey, maybe this is not a GAAP profitability argument at this valuation. Maybe there's a bigger story here.
Look,
So
at the end of the day,
We'll see.
at the end of the day, as an investor, unless you accept, okay, it's not worth my time, my effort to try to do better, and I just invest in the S&P. But if you actively do research, what you're seeking is alpha. Now, there are guys selling services like Alpha Target, but then when the alpha is there, they just disappear. And what's the alpha? Like, if we think of it like backwards, like the alpha was all in the fact that the price was awful, the narrative was awful, but we realized that, okay, there is some good in that, but sooner or later will emerge as becoming more and more valuable. So that's our focus, at always trying to understand what's the narrative, what's the reality, is there a discrepancy and asymmetry that we can exploit as investors.
All right. Next topic, big one, got a lot of people's attention. Dr. Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir, has sold 9 million shares of the company. I believe this is 10% of his stake, around maybe 15%. I'm not sure exactly on the numbers, but let's call it 10% of his stake. And he cashed out on $325 million of stock. I want to get people's reaction to this, but before that, I want to play a quick video of Karp talking about the share price, one of the rare videos where he actually talks about the stock. This was back when the stock was $6.
A lot of CEOs of technology companies obsess over their share price, and the last year or so, share prices in tech companies have come down. Are you obsessed with your share price, or you don't care that much?
I guess I'm supposed to say
You do care.
I do. Well, I care
You're
because
one of the biggest shareholders, aren't you?
yeah. Well, look, the answer that, like, I care because the people who work at Palantir care. I do actually care about our shareholders. I actually especially care about the retail shareholders, the small shareholders.
Real quick before we continue, I mean, all the people that were saying Karp only cares about retail, you know, in the past 3 months, this was when the stock was in the gutter, and these are the same sentiments he had 2 years ago. So he has really been big on this. Retail investors are courageous enough to invest their own money.
Sorry, a little bit of context. This is the same interview where Karp got heavily criticized by experts because he became very aggressive, making a sales pitch to an Asian guy.
Oh yeah, there was a guy in the
that's right.
audience, yeah, who asked,
Yeah.
how can Palantir help my company? And yeah, so you know, mainstream media did not like it, but back then 2 years ago, he was still talking about retail investors.
I've been at this 20 years. I know that, like, you know, when we DPO'd with 700, I think, and 40 million in revenue, and during that, roughly in that phase next year, we ended up with $100 billion valuation. It's like, and as I recently said, I didn't think, luckily I come from a family where I'm at the small table because I'm not an academic. I never thought I was at that good at 45. I don't think I'm that bad at 6. I know how well the company's doing. It's funny, as someone who's been somewhat skeptical of the free market in many ways, as a proud progressive, and believes that we need to ameliorate the free market by having world-class education and helping people who've been underprivileged. Medium long term, I have enormous faith in our clients, in this case our shareholders, to figure out if it's working or not. I know we built the product. I built our company as a product that will do very well under these conditions. So I'm obsessed about our company. Do I obsess about the share price every day? No, of course not.
Amir, start off with you. What is your take on Karp selling 9 million shares?
I don't know about you guys, but I don't have an input when I do an intrinsic valuation for did the CEO sell or not. So it doesn't impact the value of the business. So I personally never cared. And we always get back to this. How many times during Palantir Weekly did we talk about insider selling? And we always reach the same conclusion. There are multiple quotes of the greatest investors of all time. Take Peter Lynch, take Buffett, take whoever you want. There are many different reasons where that C-suite executive might sell. We don't know. I haven't done the math. I'm sure no one really bothered to do the math of how much he's obligated to sell, depending on the comp packages and stuff like that. It's way too complicated, at least for someone at my level to understand completely. So I never bother with this. If it was a significant stake, that might be a red flag, but I don't like it. This is just periodical. We see this all the time, back and forward. So it never really bothered me. And I'm not the kind of investor where I really look at stuff like insider selling. I just look at the value of the business. So for me, it's a nothing burger. And we're going to have this in a few months again because Xiam is going to sell or someone else is going to sell. Glacier is going to sell. It will always return to this topic and we will always reach the same conclusion that it doesn't really matter. And I'm sure we're going to reach that conclusion today as well.
Garcia, your thoughts on the sell?
Amit, do you think you could share one of my posts? I'm on my phone. I can't really find it, but if you look up the word like context under my account, I kind of reposted it earlier today, but I think it was Unusual Whales posted, $325 million worth of shares were sold by Alex Karp. And of course, people in the comments were freaking out, right? It's like, oh my gosh, it's the top. Oh gosh, he's dumping on retail. And I feel obligated to kind of add this context to those posts because whenever they just share the dollar amount with no context, for me, it's like incomplete information. Like it's almost like a clickbait headline. When people don't know how many shares he currently owns, how many did he sell, you don't know whether he sold 10%, 50%, 100% of his position. And like Amir said, red flags would come up if it was a very substantial amount of his position. But if they don't include that, all people are left is with the big dollar amount. It's like, oh my gosh, 325 million. That's a lot of money. Like that's it, folks. Palantir's going to zero, and that's all I saw. So I felt obligated to kind of add that, context. And once people know exactly how many shares he sold out of how many he's holding, then they can form an opinion about, okay, it's a small amount relative to his holding, and other people even brought up that he still has stock options that weren't even in that calculation. So I didn't go into it that deep. I just kind of went into how many does he hold, how many did he sell, and it doesn't matter. Like it's only like a couple percentage, of his total holdings. So it really doesn't. For me, it's not a big deal.
Just so I can clarify, I do think like 15% or whatever. I don't think that's a insignificant amount. But again, the way I invest, I don't really care when I look at intrinsic value of a business. So I just want to put out there, like it's not insignificant in my eyes. But
what would be the bright line for you, Amir? Do you think like approaching 30%, 25%, that's when it gets red flaggish, or do you have a bright line?
It's more like when it feels like they're dumping on us, then you're like, well, what are we missing here, guys? And it's not only from one executive. When you see all of them doing it and like dumping majority of their stakes, then you get serious red flags. But as I said, until I have the time and patience to do the math on how the compensation packages look like, how the RSUs, I mean, we have performance-based stuff now to account for as well. I mean, we're approaching that 50 that we know is unlocking a lot of stock. So, I mean, there's so many dynamics here. And this is periodical, like we will see. But still, 50% is not insignificant in my eyes. But at the end of the day, doesn't really matter at this point.
Okay. Arnie, your thoughts of chat. I'll check your message now. Goodness gracious. Arnie, your thoughts on on I was gonna say your thoughts on Chad selling because I don't know Chad selling. Your thoughts on Chad getting freaking rich because he has, probably a big stake in Palantir because he works there. But your thoughts on carp selling?
Okay, I think this is the kind of topic that I risk of getting people mad because I'm actually getting mad, but because this is exactly the same stuff that we have been discussing for like 2-3 years now. That okay, insiders are selling. Okay, fine. Like it's not positive per se. It's like okay, doesn't look good, but is that a real issue? As Amira mentioned, it's like okay, does that change the intrinsic value of the company? I think if you're worried because carp sells a bit, I think you should not invest in the stock, or at least you should judge what you're doing because it is one thing. Okay, carp sold his entire position. It gives you a sense of he doesn't want to become the CEO. But a sell per se is like, okay, it's not positive, but who knows what the hell he's going through his mind. And keep in mind, if he is not lying, he mentioned essentially that he has all his net worth into, like stock-wise, into Palantir. So it would be actually stupid on his side not to exploit this moment to say, okay, like I set the basis to keep doing this calmly for a long time. And I say that from a very different point of view, clearly. Like I wish one day I could sell 160 million like that, and that being a tiny
Dude, the
percentage.
taxes on that are, I mean, he's also selling to pay taxes for, I mean, that I think that goes without saying, but that's a lot of money giving to Uncle Sam right after you cash out 300 million. That's tough.
And look, I've been into that very similar in the sense that as Garcia, I went all in before those earnings. I went even more aggressive again before the S&P 500. Like when you are that aggressive and then boom, like you have a very nice hit on the bank, it's like, is it rational not to say, okay, at least I take some oxygen out? That makes me in the mental condition to know, okay, I don't need to make the decision that gives me maybe I'm able to sacrifice a little bit of upside, but I put myself in the condition to capture the bigger upside. Because the issue is if you're too deep into something, then you risk of becoming more emotional. So, and since there is also a psychological effect that a loss hurts you more than a gain gives you a benefit, when you see a very, very big ramp up, as we see, and imagine in carp shoes, this guy has billions at this point in Palantir shares. Imagine how mentally damaging could be thinking, oh, you're worth, let's exaggerate, 10 billions, and then a couple of weeks later is just 5. So the wealth impact is insanely big, and I think it gets bigger as you scale. So I'm realizing managing $100K is way different from managing like 2-3x, and I can imagine like managing already a portfolio of 50 million. You can't work in the same way that you manage a 5K portfolio. So there is a psychological effect that I want to underscore, that carp is essentially an allocator for himself as well. And in order to be mentally calm, he needs to also be in the position to be mentally calm. And I think this sales goes into that direction. And as Garcia mentioned, we don't know exactly how many options carp has. And on top of the options, he has also like the expectations of further shares options coming along the way as targets are achieved. So potentially we can know how many shares he has, how many options he has, more or less, but we don't really know what is the future for him. So imagine you are so close to getting the same equivalent into shares or more in a couple of months. Why wouldn't you take some profits now? That is actually a good moment. So this to say, short, long story short, there is a lot that we don't know. If you are scared just because your VCO is selling a bit, I think the problem is not on the company, but is okay. No, I don't want to become aggressive.
Okay, let me. Okay, let me. Garcia, can you go on mute? I think there's a little echo there.
Oh, is there? Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
One
Okay.
sec.
You're good. I got you. Okay, so Matt, I want to get your take on this, but before that, I want to ask a question, and I think we'll get everyone's take on this, but I want to slide this question in here because we're already on the topic, and the chat can answer this as well. And Matt, I think you'll have some thoughts on this. So, got a DM today. Here's the DM. I need some feedback on it. I have 13,000 shares of Palantir at an 11.98 cost basis. I'm thinking of trimming 30% of the position to buy a lake cabin in Kentucky. And he said, I can visit because I was wearing a Kentucky sweater today. My question, do I wait and continue to hold Palantir while selling conservative covered calls, or do I sell off 30% to fund a lake cabin for the family and the kids? I thought this was a very interesting scenario. I thought, you know what, a video would be better than just like me typing up something. Obviously, none of this is financial advice, but this is a predicament a lot of people are in. A lot of people decided at $6 to $12, you know what, fuck it, we're taking a risk on Palantir. And it's worked out, and it's worked out aggressively. And so this person's up basically 3x on his shares. He wants to sell 30% to buy a cabin for the wife and kids. Matt, how would you conceptualize this problem?
The first thing I would understand is how much is Palantir in the entirety of the portfolio. If it's a massive position, I'll just be blunt, and this is just me speaking. Palantir is early. And what I mean by that is, it really also depends on this person's life cycle. But, I'm 33. I plan on at least being here for the next 10 years. So for me to sell Palantir right now would be a detriment to my future self. But I would find money elsewhere, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sell Palantir, especially if you think that, there's future legs in the stock position. And it doesn't necessarily have to be today, tomorrow. I think 10, 15 years down the road, are you going to hurt, mentally feel bad about the choice that you make by selling potentially 30% by, let's just say, looking back in 15 years? I know I would. I've already regretted not buying more when I was so convicted, to only have 4,500 shares. I'm kicking myself in the butt. But it depends, if this person this is their only position, then, I'd be more inclined to be like, okay, yeah, take a little bit off the top. But if there's other opportunities out there, scan the other opportunities, right? If you think that you're looking at the portfolio and you have something that you think is just going to be a dead stock, why not sell that instead of selling Palantir? And I've done that multiple times over the past few years. Pepsi, for example, is a prime example. I held Pepsi from the $90 range to almost the $200 range until it pulled back, or maybe it got to $190 or something like that. And I ended up selling it at like the $180, $185 range. Not that I hate Pepsi, but I looked at the stock and I said, is this really going to triple or quadruple in the next 5 to 10 years? And I said, no, this money is better allocated to something like Rocket Lab, to something that will continue to grow. And so I took that strategic choice. Now, I think everybody on here knows that over the past 2 years or so, I've bought 2 rental properties in New Jersey, and they're doing quite well. I never sold a single share of Palantir, Rocket Lab, any of the things that I'm highly convicted in. Why? Because, I personally think that they're going to do really well. But keep in mind, I don't know if this person's going to rent this out. I don't know if it's an investment. I don't know if it's just for the family's sake. If it's a significant amount of money, 30%, you're still keeping 70%, hopefully, of the Palantir position. You got to live your life sometime, right? Especially if you're, say, in your 50s, 60s, you have to consider the quality of life that you have with your family, friends, others. I even see it now going into my early 30s being like, man, I see time slipping away. My 20s slipped away because I was working extremely hard. Now I've got to where I am. But take that time to live, like Amit, for example, he's going to start traveling to different states and start to meet up with people because he wants to make those connections. It's not, if he was, actually trying to make money and trying to do all, he would probably just stick to doing YouTube all day, every day and not leave his house. Right. But he's trying to make those connections. He's trying to live. He's trying to have a good time. So, I mean, you have to balance, and nobody can answer that question for you. But what I would say is take the opportunity to say where you are in your life, where you are in your portfolio growth, your maturity, and say, in 10 years' time, would I regret selling 30% of my Palantir position, or would I regret not spending more time with friends, family, etc., by buying this cabin? And I think hopefully, if you sit on it for a week or so, you'll be able to come up with the right answer for you.
So we had Chad in the chat says, buy the effing cabin.
There it
Which
is.
one of the remaining three of you, we'll get to all three, but which one of you immediately agree with that sentiment? Arnie. Okay, Arnie, go ahead.
I think it is important to recognize that investing is not only about the stock market, but literally every decision that we make is an investment. Like imagine Palantir helping decision making in war, in the corporate environment. Every decision is an investment because every decision has a lot of effect that come along the way. And unless someone is a professional investor that wants to, okay, like the goal is I need to build like an investor path. In a moment like this, I think one should need to realize, okay, there are some investments that are monetarily difficult to judge, but as well as important. So connected to what I said previously, is the investment into an effing cabin worth more, not monetarily, but in the overall value for you, also in terms of memories with your kids or something like that? Or you just need to follow, is a better investment for you to keep building wealth because you have different priorities in life? I think while we can agree that there is an objective trade-off that could be calculated, the real trade-off, the real investment is very personal because everyone's position is very different. So, for instance, if I had a family, I would prioritize the effing cabin. If I were alone, I would say, okay, I just need to be in the condition that I want to keep doing what I'm doing. And I know that if I can keep doing what I'm doing with love, with patience, with calmness, then rather than buying one effing cabin, I could buy 10. But I think that's very personal.
Yeah, and I think the whole point of investing at the end of the day is to have disposable income that you can then use to do things like buy a cabin. And now maybe a simple solution is, hey, rent a cabin for a weekend or something, right? Like just to get the feel of it, but so you don't have to let go of all the shares. But if you legit want the cabin and a stock is up, it's up 300%. One thing I think we all have to remember is Peter Thiel, the co-founder of Palantir, that guy knows how to sell. He sold the Facebook IPO after having like a penny average on his shares because he was the first seed investor. He's sold Palantir many times. He sells private stakes on the secondary markets all the time. Like he is a professional seller. And I think he sold all of his, or a majority of his Bitcoin, he said a couple months ago after buying it at 30,000 in October 2023. He doesn't care. He'll take profits and he'll go to the next thing and he'll know not to get emotionally attached to stuff. So I think if you're not selling off the entire position, it's not a bad thing if there's this life thing that really matters and it requires freeing up a little bit of capital. Amir, your thoughts on this person's situation?
I don't know the guy, but it kind of sounds like he's asking you, Amit, do you think the price will keep going up? Should I hold on or should I start trimming? And, just the fact that he's asking you makes it sound like he's ready to trim in a sense.
Agreed.
And in general, if I am uncertain about something, I would lean more into like trimming in general. I don't know this guy's position, but isn't there a saying that there's a good hack like flip a coin, not for the coin to decide for you, but because when the coin is in the air, you'll realize what outcome you're actually hoping for. So that's a good way to go about it. And
wait, hold on. Can we do that on earnings? Like, can I flip a coin before the results come out and then like
keep that in mind?
Well, we always want earnings to be good. Like
not just for Palantir, for every stock. I'll do this I'll make it a game every live stream. We'll do
like what you hope. Like I hope the earnings are trash.
No, I hope
is that an option?
Maybe for Snowflake.
No. The point is you flip the coin when you can't decide, and while the coin is in the air, you start to hope for one over the other. So that's like the whatever. And you know what they say, if the gains are good enough for a screenshot, they're good enough for trimming. But no, in general, if it's like leisure, if it's a luxury for you to own the cabin, then like do whatever you want. However, if it's a cabin in the sense like it's a home for your family or something, then I would do that. Because that's the only reason I invest to begin with. Like, who cares if I'm gonna compound this 20% stake or whatever he thought about trimming, when the only reason I invest is for my family to begin with. So it all depends on what the purpose is of the cabin. Like, I don't even know like the term cabin in the US, what that entails. It's just like vacational home. You're gonna spend a week out of the year, like once every 52 weeks you're gonna spend a weekend there. Like, who cares? But do whatever you want. If it's like in the sense that it's a home, that it's elevating your family's life and that you need it for that purpose, then yeah, sure, I would do that. But again, I don't know your situation, but it more sounds like you are asking Amit to predict, Amit, will the stock go up? Should I hold on or should I start trimming? Yeah, that's my take anyway.
Garcia, what would you think about this situation?
I gotta agree with Amir. Like it does sound like it is. It's a question, but he's actually asking that, and I think what Matt was saying, as far as depending how much of a percentage it's taken in his portfolio. Like, let's say if it was me, like I'm all in and I've been really wanting to buy this cabin, I would do. And for me, I'm definitely one to think it's not always just black or white, like 30% or zero. I would go maybe 15 or 20% and then finance the rest. Take out a loan and then use a nice chunk to pay off a good amount, but still remain, pretty long in the stock if that's what I believe in. But if he's secretly having doubts of the stock price, like he's getting nervous, he's getting scared, then yeah, it does make sense to trim a little, to kind of ease that anxiety while he keeps studying the company or the stock, and he gets that conviction. Because for me, I've always said you have to be invested as much as your conviction is invested, because if you have more money than what you believe in, you're not going to be able to sleep at night. You're going to be nervous about your money. You're going to be scared. You're going to believe any FUD that people spread online. You're going to be scared for your net worth. So I would be leaning towards getting the cabin if it's something that it's going to be for his family.
So this brings up another question that's really important, which is a conversation about valuation. It's been a couple weeks since we had a real conversation about valuation. That'll be kind of the last thing. We had a few deals this week, some healthcare partnerships, some government stuff, but I don't think we're going to add any crazy analysis on that. The real conversation I think here that everyone cares about is, does this 37 make any sense? So we closed above 37 for the first time since 2021. 450 million shares of volume. A lot of that volume came at the end of the day because people were buying and fund managers were buying for S&P 500. Typically, stocks fall about 15 to 20% after they get included over the next 6 months. We'll see if Palantir is an anomaly here. But so far, it's had a massive run up from 29.50 on September 6th to 37 now on September 20th. Palantir is valued at $83 billion, doing less than $500 million of net income, which are profits. And a majority of that net income is from treasury bills, because they have $4 billion in cash collecting about 5%. That now is going to be collecting 4.5%. 33 times price to sales, 200 PE. You got a lot of people, including myself, saying, all right, the valuation is a bit stretched here. And I think it's very obvious that's the case. However, you've also got a lot of people, like pretty much all of us that have been covering the company for 3 years, saying, okay, so we know the valuation is stretched on a quantitative basis, but qualitatively, as we talked about in the beginning of the show, this is the best story out there. Chips, ontology, Western values, CARP. You can put all these different elements of the story, but this is one of the best stories out there. So the broader question is, does 37 make sense? Do you see 37 turning into 40 by the end of the year that a lot of people think could happen? Or is 37 egregious? CARP selling 9 million shares is his advisor saying, hey, come on, like it's time to take some profits, and we're probably going to get a pullback in the short term. Arnie, let's start with you.
I'm starting thinking that I will hurt Emir's here by saying this, but once you are getting into the momentum phase, I think the momentum goes into, okay, the price needs to discover what are the real values that people attach to the stock, price discovery, if we want to give it a name. And I personally think that despite some pullbacks here and there, now the momentum that is so strong, the stock is set to really follow the story. And I think it is fair to say that this story is getting better and better. As we mentioned previously, during good times, people focus into stories. And if we remember, Tesla got that huge ram up because it saw the golden convergence of yes, the story is getting better and better, but also the financials are getting better and better. Now we are seeing this 30% as like that's the goal that we wanted so deeply to see after the first guidance, and then this 30% CAGR never really materialized. Actually, we got declining growth. And I think at this point, until the growth accelerates and or just keeps sustaining itself, is like, okay, until we get a slowdown somehow that could trigger some fears, I believe this momentum can keep building. And what's interesting that I underscored, I think at the beginning of the year, but I think is something that we need to be really aware of is now all the visibility Palantir is getting becomes also business value. It is not like in the meme stock period where, okay, you have a lot of visibility, but it's like useless visibility. And Palantir, it is fair to say, it didn't have the tools to capture that attention into business value. All the pilots were so long, and it was not really a positive. It was known, but not for the good reasons. Okay, now the story is getting better and better, but not because suddenly it's a meme stock, but because the fundamentals of a company are exploding. The use cases of the successful use cases are exploding, as you also saw at IPCon. So now Palantir's brand is becoming more and more valuable. And if you give a lot of visibility to a good brand, stuff starts selling themselves. The more news that pop out that trigger the interest of investors, but also professionals in the field, it has more resonance. So I wouldn't be surprised if we keep accelerating. Obviously, I don't expect, next quarter, 70% growth. But I would seriously, at this point, not cut out the possibilities of seeing very strong growth in the quarters ahead. And what happens next, how the story keeps evolving, is what truly matters. It is fair to say that at this price, the stock is not a price that I would buy. Like, I also received a message from a friend, CFA, managing funds, asking, but is Palantir a buy? And I say, for me, is more a price, is a more a hold rather than a buy. But
well, why wouldn't you buy at 37?
I would buy if I just wanted to start a position. I would not buy convinced, in 6 months or 1 year, I'm already up on the position. Like, the risk of the stock just being flat is relatively high. As an investor, you want to put money into stuff that has a good internal rate of return. So, and that also depends on the investing style. If you are a Cathy Wood, just following trends, maybe it could make sense to, I can keep buying while telling the stories online of how good Palantir is, but in reality, she's just doing the opposite. So I don't know. I'm confused on that. First.
Garcia, while you're driving to the Lambo dealership, your thoughts on valuation?
I will say I'm not jealous for anyone who doesn't have their position fully built out. Because I would feel for someone who's just, maybe they have 10% of the position they would like, and they're seeing this stock do what it's been doing. I would definitely be feeling, man, like, God damn it. Like, now I got to buy shares in the 30s when I could have been buying in the 10s, 20s. I mean, I had my position last year. I think it was it started off as 10% of the portfolio. And then by the end of 2023, it became like 25, 30%. By Q4 earnings, it was already 90, 100% of the portfolio. So I decided then, I was like, okay, the more I do research, the more everything's lining up. I have friends who do TA, like Cantonese Cat and and those peeps, like they're always doing TA, and they're saying, dude, everything's starting to line up. So I am seeing all these different I guess signals that are saying, look, everything's starting to line up for this company. Valuation, balance sheet, the story, the technicals, everything. So I said, look, I'm just gonna start I'm gonna start plowing in money now. And I, of course, hindsight, should have been doing it in the 5s and the 6s and the 7s, but I wasn't really accumulating. I didn't have that mindset back then. So uh, because I already have my position fully built out, I'm not aggressively buying as I used to. All of 2020 or the end of 2023, I was buying the dip on a 1% down day. I was buying 25, 50 shares. I was buying shares almost every day, and that was a time where I was very aggressive in buying any dip. And people would ridicule me on Twitter, being like, "Oh, wow, you're buying the dip on $24. Good luck. It's going to 10. It's going to 10. It's going back to 5. Like, good luck buying your shares at this level." Um, but I think if somebody's starting their position, I wouldn't tell them, "Oh, stay away, don't buy the stock," because none of us know where the stock is going to be in 6 months, maybe even in a year from now. Like we have a high degree of I guess a strong belief that it'll be much higher in the long term, but in the short term, who knows where it's going to be? None of us can tell the future. So if I didn't have the position now, like if I was starting from zero, I had all this money and I didn't have any shares, I would just start DCAing. I would just start buying, 10 shares, 20 shares a week, and just consistently keep buying, because we're not going to outsmart the market. So that's kind of where that's what I would do.
All right, Amir, valuation. You wrote an article a couple of weeks ago saying Palantir is expensive but not overvalued. Do you still feel the same?
No, but let's get to it. So, to what Garcia mentioned, I really don't think that there's ever a rush to get into any equity position. As Peter Lynch has stated in his books and the talks, and even as Karp says, there will be times when Palantir is severely undervalued, and there will be times when it's overvalued and expensive. And to make great returns, you don't need to hit the absolute bottom. So there's never really any rush to get into equity positions from the way I see it. And at the end of the day, when we invest, we are paying for future financial performance in one sense or another, unless you're buying like a paper legacy mill in some remote part of the world that's just static. But in general, there are two dynamics here. First, you have a premium on the intrinsic value basis, like how much above fair value are you willing to pay? And then you have a premium on the pricing basis, like where it's trading at expensive multiples. And it's been there. That's been the case for Palantir for a long while. Like looking at something like a PE is useless for Palantir. It's always been very, very expensive because it just got profitable. And also on the price to sales ratio, like the premium has always been there, but the premium has not always been there on an intrinsic value basis. So as for the pricing, I never invest based on pricing ratios like PE, price to sales. And as for intrinsic value, for truly great high quality companies, I can tolerate a premium to the intrinsic value and hold on to my shares, but I would not buy at an extreme premium. So for example, if I am holding a amazing company, take something like FICO, like that stock is super, super expensive. Like pull up a chart on it, it's crazy. But do you really want to sell one of like once in a lifetime stocks based on a premium on intrinsic value? Perhaps not, but you might not want to buy into it either. And I think that's the case for Palantir as well. Like I can tolerate a premium on the Palantir stock price in terms of intrinsic value, but I'm still careful not buying at such an extreme. And I mentioned at the start of this that Palantir is starting to prove my thesis correct. Like they are starting to perform in accordance to the story that I have told in my evaluation model. And we may see 100, 200 million contract announcement, and that is expected from the intrinsic value point of view. But from the pricing point of view, as Arnie says, like the price discovery, it might keep pushing the stock higher and higher, because there are two completely different dynamics where like 90% of the stock market is more focused on the pricing, and just a tiny portion is driven by the intrinsic value over the short term. So 38, you asked me if it's expensive to me now, if it's overvalued. I would say yes. I can't tell a story where Palantir is worth $40 today, but I get the premium. Like it's in the cycle now where it's the best story in the market, as you mentioned. So it makes sense. I wouldn't buy it here, but I wouldn't sell it just based on like I would accept this premium. I would say fair value is somewhere around 32, 33 with what we know today, and they are performing in accordance to my expectations at least. So there's no rush for me. I'm not stressed out. Palantir will be undervalued one day again. There's no rush to do anything. So everyone calm down.
Is there a range you're thinking, oh, below this it starts getting undervalued again?
If it was below 30, I would be very inclined to add a lot. Around 31, 32, there would have to be, because it all depends, as you mentioned, the IRR. So we're not living in isolation where there's only invest in Palantir or don't invest. Like we have so many different companies to invest in, so you have to weigh it against the other opportunities. Whenever you put $1 in Palantir, that's $1 that could have been in a different company. So for Palantir under 30, I'm very inclined because of the quality of the company. When it's around fair value, it only makes sense if there's no better opportunity out there.
I didn't know other companies existed. I've just been buying Palantir. I thought that's all there was.
Matt, your thoughts on if 37 is a little too much?
I mean, I think you always have to take into consideration, right? Are you talking about today or are you talking about 10 to 15 years down the road? Regardless of what the price is today, I think if you're interested in the company and you think that it honestly might be something that's up there with the Googles, the Microsofts of the world, or even, let's just say, half of those sorts of companies. So we're talking $1 trillion status. Buy a couple shares just so you have it in the portfolio so you can look at it every day. Because there's going to be a time and a place. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be a week from now, but it could be a month, 2 months, 6 months from now, where the stock is out of favor for God knows what reason. It happens when all stocks, they'll be down 10, 15%, where the rest of the market's up. And those are the times that you want to have the opportunity to buy and add to your positions. And that gives you time in between the times right now where it's at $83 billion market cap. And you know, you're seeing it now back at 65 or $60 billion market cap. And you're saying, well, this is probably the best as it's going to get. And you can add slowly over time into a position. But I also would think, you know, to me, I look at this like the company is eventually going to go to $1 trillion market cap. So we're not even a tenth of the price there, if that makes sense. So, you know, if you think about it this percentage this way, if you're going to, let's say 100%, which is $1 trillion market cap, that's where you really think it's going to go. Buying at 6% or a $60 billion market cap versus an 8%, which is an $80 billion market cap, 10, 15 years from now, is it really going to matter? And you might say, oh, but that's a 20% position or 20% larger, 25% larger position. Well, I like to argue that at least you got your feet in the door, you know? So once again, this is all dependent upon your own personal portfolio, what risk tolerance you have, etc. I'm one of those guys that would rather be early and see the stock price decline and I could add more because I'm always adding to the portfolio every single month, than forget about the opportunity. I can't tell you how many times where I've been like, ooh, it's too expensive right now, I'll come back. And then I forget about the stock, and 3 years later I check back, go, ooh, I remember that was such a great opportunity, but I was waiting for 10% pullback. And next thing you know, it's up 100%. And I'm like, shit. And what do I call that? Everybody knows. Say it with me. You're being a dollar foolish to try to be a penny wise, or a penny wise, dollar foolish, right? You're trying to pinch pennies. And at the end of the day, you played yourself, as DJ Khaled would say. So just kind of think about it from that perspective. I can't tell you whether or not it's overvalued, undervalued. And I'll close with my little monologue with this. if you honestly think that the revenue is going to be growing at 20 to 25%, even 30% in the coming years, keep in mind, Palantir is one of those companies that continues to keep their cost basis really well in check. We're not talking about Google. We're not talking about Snowflake, where they continue to hire. They're continually making the company more efficient to the point where that 20-30% revenue growth that you see is going to go directly to the bottom line. And obviously I'm being facetious. It's not all that 600 million from 2.75 billion that they're going to get in revenue this year to the 3 point something billion they're going to get next year. That whole 700 million in revenue growth isn't all going to the bottom line, but a large portion of it is, because you already have so much of the operating costs covered. And that's what we've been fighting for over the past, 5-10 years as the company's been coming into maturation. But you will see 300 or 400 million of that go directly to the bottom line. And if you're only making 500 million today, that means you're going to be growing the bottom line, the net income, by way more than 20-30%, way more than what you're seeing on the revenue top line growth. So just keep that in mind when you're keeping you're up at night being like, should I buy, should I not buy? And you're seeing Palantir at say $100x, say price to earnings multiple or even larger, right? I mean, keep that in mind that it's going to drop very quickly, way quicker than you could probably anticipate in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay. We're going to end it out. I said that was the last conversation, but we're going to end it out with this. My thoughts on that conversation are, I agree with pretty much everyone. I think the valuation.
No AIP. We're leaving without AIP.
We should talk about AIP. Okay, so I'll finish that, then we'll get to this. My thoughts are valuation's a bit extended. I don't blame people for taking profits. I think selling some covered calls in this 35 to 40-ish range are going to be fine to manage. And yeah, Karp selling 9 million shares is probably his advisor saying, hey, it's a bit stressed right now. But I don't think we need to have a pullback because, as all of you guys said, the story is great and the momentum is there. Okay, so let's do AIP. I had another topic we'll end on, but let's do AIP. AIP Con. It was fun. I got to go there. I got to host the conference, which was really fun. At the pregame halftime show, we saw a lot of customers present a lot of new stuff. I got to talk to some customers behind the scenes. I have a couple more interviews coming out tomorrow. What was your guys' takeaway from it? Amir and Arnie, you were live streaming it, so we'll start with you, Amir. How'd you think about AIP Con?
There we go, unmute. I'll try to keep it short because you seem eager to leave, so that's fine.
No, it's not actually eager to leave. I actually forgot. I was going to put the Jim Cramer segment, but we'll leave that for the end because that's a fun segment. We'll leave it for the end. So go ahead.
Okay. First, I want to ask you, how did it feel to get a personal shout out as the cult leader by Karp when he went on stage? Like, did you know about it? Did it catch you by surprise? Did people look your way? Did you become shy? Did you become proud? Like, how did it feel when he mentioned you as the cult leader, directly?
So the story of that is Karp walked on stage, was given the AIP Con speech, as he does every AIP Con. And, Karp's just Karp, right? Like, he'll react to anything. He'll make jokes on the spot. And no, I didn't know that was going to happen. I don't even think he fully knew I was going to be there because, he's not managing the halftime show and the media stuff. He's running the company. So I think he walked on stage. He takes a look over at the audience, and then he locks eyes with me. And while he's talking, he was like, and we have the leader of our retail, and he's just looking at me, and then he moves on. So that's kind of how that moment happened. But it was cool. It was really fun. As much as I liked the title of it, I also am hesitant to embrace that because I know how big of a community this is, how much work everyone puts in to get here, how I would be nothing if so many people didn't contribute into the crowdsourcing of information. So I just think that moment was Karp. Forget just acknowledging me, but it was him acknowledging retail matters in a real way, just like he did on the S&P 500 video. And it was kind of a big FU to Wall Street that said retail was stupid for buying it at $6. And he was like, hey, we're starting off AIP Con. We got retail involved here. We got people that actually care about the company, and we have clients that give a shit about us. And now we're in the S&P 500.
Dude, we were so proud. Everyone was getting so hype about that. I imagine, obviously, I don't live in a hood in the US, so I don't know if this is factual, but I imagine it feels like, when you're growing up in the hood, not many opportunities, and then just that one kid from the hood makes it to the NBA, and everyone's like, that's my boy, That's kind of the way I felt about that.
Yeah,
I imagine it's similar.
I'll say I was really confused because when he said the leader of the retail community, I was like, what are you talking about? I'm in Houston right now. So I just didn't understand what he was talking about the whole time. I got really confused.
Anyway,
It was
in
so, as soon as he said it though, I glanced at my phone and it was just message. There was like notifications were blowing up. They're like, "Did you hear about that?" It was cool, dude. It was really cool. I mean, I might as well play the video for those that didn't see the video. I did
okay,
get
let's watch the video and then I'll recap.
Yeah. And the story behind this video is I was having a meeting with someone and Carp walked into the room and then I said, "Hey, do you want to take a picture?" Because we usually take a picture at AIPCon. And he said, "Sure." And he was like, "Let's like represent S&P 500 with our hands." And I was like, "Do you want to just do a video instead?" And he was like, "All right, let's do a video." And that's when the video went down. But the point of this video, the reason why it was also so special is because he didn't hesitate to say yes to this. You know, he's like immediately he was just like, "Yeah, let's take this video and let's do it." It was the most excited I have seen Carp ever. I've got the privilege of meeting him 3 times, and he was just elated the whole weekend. He was just happy because the company that he started 25 years ago, that I don't think he even thought would get to these levels, is now getting to these levels and survived some major potential chances to go bankrupt. So here is the video. It's only 7 seconds, but this is what it is. I'm here with Dr. Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir. Congratulations on getting to the S&P 500.
Fuck yeah.
I'm here with Dr. Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir. Congratulations on getting to the S&P 500.
Fuck yeah.
It was pretty wild, dude. I'm not gonna lie.
Fuck yeah, dude.
I did not know he was gonna say "fuck yeah." I didn't know what I was gonna say because I was ready for a picture, but then he wanted to like represent S&P 500. I didn't know how to do that. Usually he does the V for it. He always does some type of figure thing or hand sign. And we didn't know how to do S&P, so I was like, let's just do a video. It's easier. And then they press record. Thank God my phone was charged. You guys know me in the chat. You know my phone's usually never charged. And I said, congrats. And he says, fuck yeah. And I think it was so authentic. It was such a real moment. And it was just really special. It was awesome.
All right. So, I covered it with Arnie. So huge thanks to Arnie for being there. And a lot of people tuned in. I think we kind of lucked out that you were at AIPCon. So like, if you weren't, perhaps we could have done it together. But yeah, it was a great event. A lot of interaction. The community was great. So, initially when AIP first came out, it was all about using a chat interface to drive outcomes, right? Like ChatGPT was just gaining momentum. AIP followed, and people were like, "Oh my God, you can use like an LLM and you can drive outcomes by just chatting." But we really didn't see any chat interface in any of the presentations. So it's really come a long way to the point where it felt more like a native FoundryCon rather than AIPCon as we know it traditionally when it first launched. And it uses LLMs and the logic from that in a completely different way than we expected. It seems like the hype for just having a chat interface is really dying out. One of the key takeaways I had from AIPCon in general is how many of the clients mentioned that they want to expand their partnerships with Palantir after their initial use cases. Most of them, I think it was like rough figure, like 80% of the presentations were like, we started doing this and we are looking to expand our collaboration with Palantir. And that's a very powerful thing to say because they're not paid to be there. To begin with, this is like AIPCon 5, and I still don't understand the incentive for someone to present like, this is how we're out competing our competitors. This is what we're doing to win in our industry. And I'm like, where's the value for them as a company to do that? So that's really powerful. Like, as Carp says, they're not paying them to be there. They're there out of their own violation to present and learn from different companies that are also using Palantir.
Do you also think they get a kind of cool factor by showing off that they're using this AI software for their company?
I'm not sure. Like, I'm trying to put myself in a business owner position where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna show you how I'm beating you. And I can't really see like the benefit of doing that, but that's also what makes it so powerful, right? That they are there for free. They are presenting, they are telling the world how they're winning, and Palantir is at the core of that. And many of them, as I mentioned, they said we want to expand with Palantir. I mean, some of the presentations, like if we take Associated Materials, it's like ERP systems are dead. Sorry to say it, Palantir is the future. We have like Trinity Rail, like we tried to do something with consultant. It was going to take several years. It's going to cost X amount of millions. We just did Palantir and we achieved this in weeks. Like, that's such powerful statements, you know?
By the way, real quick, before you finish, let me just play that quick 40-second video. This is what Amir is talking about. This is the types of endorsements Palantir was getting at AAPCon.
Everything that's in an ERP system, we're doing in Palantir today. So if you're here and you're an ERP reseller, I'm sorry, your time's over.
By the way, when he said that, I looked over with Natalie, who did the halftime show with me, and we just both we both just glanced at each other and we're like, did he just fucking say that? Because the whole audience was like, holy shit. Like, he just like proclaimed that, right? That was a big moment. You can't really capture it in the video, but people were like, wow, he actually said that.
So it was not scheduled.
Oh no, it was not scheduled, not at all. I mean, that was, he was spontaneous. I doubt that was on his slide deck that he was looking at.
Seller,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, your time's over.
I think
A lot of you guys here, I know.
Go ahead, Amir. Go ahead.
it was either him or Trinity Rail that also started off by like, yeah, we tried to do this with consultancies and it was like useless. So that's also like powerful. But you know, if I look at it on a grander scale, like AIPCon as an AIPCon, I didn't think that this was the best one. There were a lot of different use cases, and with every AIPCon, we get introduced to different ways of using Palantir. But what I lacked here is, because not every use case is interesting to you personally or something that you can understand. But one thing everyone can understand that tunes into AIPCon is business impact. There weren't a lot of comparisons like we have used to, like we have been used to seeing at the AIPCons. Like, this is what we were doing before, and this is post Palantir. It took us 3 weeks. We are saving this much. We're this much more efficient. Like the comparisons, like before and after using Palantir. Now we just got like, yeah, we got 300 plus hospital beds. I'm like, 300? How many do you have in total? Like, what kind of increase are we talking about? Like, we didn't get a lot of context in the presentations. There were some, of course. But that was something that I missed. Like, I understand AIPCons are not for investors per se. Like, they're not holding these for me to understand the business more. From my financial perspective, they're doing it like for the engineering part, the building part, and I get that. But still, like, as a viewer, AIPCon 5 was kind of weak in that sense. From an engineering point of view, I'm sure it was great. And I think 3 presentations stand out. So the one you just mentioned, associated materials, Trinity Rail, which was the first one, and then also the Mount Sinai presentation.
Yeah.
And the reason I point out the Mount Sinai one, like, it was one of the most boring presentations I've ever seen. But it's so powerful because it targets something that Palantir is so fit to disrupt, which is like legacy businesses. Like, their problem is like, well, we get a lot of patients and then we get claim denials from the insurance companies, and we don't have a way to deal with that efficiently. They're like, with Palantir, instead of taking like 90 minutes to write a claim, we can do it like at a fraction of that time by having the letters composed with AIP, and we can be so much more efficient. And oh my God, you guys, you want to see something? Like, wait.
What happened? Are we having someone join? Uh-oh, we're having someone officially join. She's going to be getting all these Palantir shares one day.
Hey.
She's getting stage fright.
I'm gonna cut it short. Arnie and me, we shared our opinions in general, so I'm sure whatever he says is something I will agree with. So
this is where family takes priority. Bye. Have a good one. See you, Amir.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, Arnie, let me finish that clip, and then we'll go to you and get your thoughts on it.
Everything that's in an ERP system, we're doing in Palantir today. So if you're here and you're an ERP reseller, I'm sorry, your time's over. A lot of you guys here I know have legacy systems. You can do more in Palantir in less time than it's going to take you to implement a new ERP system. For us to implement ERP across 11 factories, we're talking almost 5 years. This is less than 9 months work, and we've implemented over 10 business use cases already. We are seeing immediate bottom line results we're driving on-time delivery. Our customers actually like us. We actually interviewed our customers. The reports went from, oh man, it's like a Ouija board when we order stuff, to, holy cow, they actually deliver on time. It's amazing. We're driving that kind of change. Everything that's in an ERP system.
Arnie, your thoughts on ERPCon?
Well, I also think that was the highlight of the event. Each ERPCon has the moment, and I think this was the moment for simple reasons. It is clear the kind of value Palantir is able to help companies extract from that chart at the end. You can see clearly the difference before Palantir, after Palantir. And if you realize, okay, being efficient into not having delays into delivering your product, your reputation as a company increases, your customers are happier, everybody is happier, which is with software, you improve your operations and everything starts spinning better. I personally liked more the average presentation at this event. I think on the past events, there were some very, very good ones, and other were more okay. I think the level of the presentations was on average better. I struggled a bit to follow precisely everything, but it was I think more a problem of Emir and I being streaming for quite some time, and we didn't really have a moment of okay, now I can re-elaborate a little bit our thoughts, because as soon as we finished the first part, then there was the break part, and then boom, typically we had those 10 minutes just to re-elaborate each other. So that is on the how I dealt with that. I personally loved one thing, let's say two things that I think are worth underscoring. We saw Maven, and we know how crucial this Maven is, because Maven is unlocking so many contracts into the government side, and that is good, great for the business per se, but also in terms of reputation. Now Palantir doesn't need to be, well, it has never been, but it doesn't need to be shy of working into the remote places of the government, dealing with the most critical use cases. Now that becomes a way to shine, and we even got a very, 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 very high-ranked general from the army showcasing Maven, and that is a sort of statement. Okay, we want Palantir to be that bridge that brings the best of our government side, the peak technology that is developed for the most critical use cases, to the commercial world, and vice versa. I think that's a very powerful signal that goes in the direction also of the other point that I wanted to make, that we saw that clip related to ERP. Essentially, what SAP, the German SAP is one of the few big tech, small tech companies in Europe, which is the standard of this software called ERP, Enterprise Resource Management. Essentially a tool that helps companies managing not only the accounting, but also essentially the numbers of the companies. Okay, great. You can build essentially an ERP in Palantir, but not only. Palantir wants to become the operating system of the modern enterprise, the modern manufacturer. And what Palantir wants to achieve is providing a product called Warp Speed that encapsulates this program, ERP, and some others, as it was mentioned by Sham. I personally was expecting a tech presentation from Sham showcasing Warp Speed as a product, but I think it was premature. We just got the hints from, okay, this ERP this ERP segment showcased, okay, this is what you can do on that side. And then there was another presentation. Let me check the company. It was from Trinity Trail that was able to build a PLM, product life cycle management software as well into Palantir. So we see like small steps with which Palantir wants to become like that single software that, yes, gives you the full picture of the company, but gradually wants to become the software that is almost entirely used by companies. So as Palantir's reputation keeps increasing, becoming this key software leader and partner for companies would become easier. Imagine, like, once you have a very strong reputation, it becomes mentally safer also for CEOs saying, okay, we can rely this much on this company. Yes, it's relatively risky to rely this much on a company, but if we know that is a good company, it is stable, it provides value, okay, we can do that. I think those two are the most important stuff. On one side, seeing Palantir going deeper and deeper into becoming the bridge from the government side to the commercial side. And the second is, okay, warp speed is getting closer and closer, and that single package, let's call it that way, could be like the trigger to this really, really massive adoption.
Garcia, your thoughts on APCon?
Yeah, my favorite presentation was the NGA, was the Maven presentation by far, because it really did showcase that, okay, man, you have this high-ranking official, and I made a joke about it on Twitter where I was like, wow, Palantir really, convinced these hospitals, oil field companies, and now the U.S. military generals, who knows how much they paid them to pump our stock. Wow, they're really shilling our stock right now. It's like, no, these guys are excited to show off the results that they're getting, from using Palantir. Like, that's what they're talking about, and I mean, that's always been one of the strongest reasons why I'm invested in Palantir, is that, them being involved with the U.S. Army or with the U.S. Navy. It was only the first couple of steps before getting contracts with the Space Force, with the Air Force, with Marine Corps. And today, was it today or yesterday that we got that additional 100 million? Because that was for the rest of the branches, right? Like that included basically all of them. So that's kind of reinforcing that thesis of like, oh my God, like it is inevitable. Like, we have been talking about it. So seeing it out in public like that, it's incredible. And then I don't know which company the presentation was for. I think it was one of the first ones. It was two gentlemen giving the presentation, and he was talking about how Palantir is known to have software that catches the bad guys, but you can use that software to catch the bad guys in your business. And those bad guys are basically things or departments or even people who are wasting your company's resources. Like, where's your company really getting stuck? Let's find the bad actors in your company. It could be a department, it could be a system, or whatever it is. And it reminded me too that I think, I don't know if it was Palantir, or I'm pretty sure it was, where a couple years ago the Obama administration I think they were using Palantir to discover the inefficiencies in healthcare, or I'm not sure which department. I don't know which department it was, but I think they were so good at their job, they started uncovering so much crap that they actually stopped using them, because it was going to become such a big deal that the taxpayers were going to be like, wow, you're wasting that much money? Like, that's how much waste? So it was going to look worse, actually. Like, Obama couldn't just turn around and say, oh yeah, guys, we're wasting 90% of our money here. Like, they had to stop it, or else it would look bad, because they were becoming way too efficient too quickly. So that's that's kind of my thoughts. Those were the kind of the two presentations that I really liked.
Okay, Matt, your thoughts on APCon?
I echo a lot of what Garcia said with respect to the legacy systems being retired. I still think that there's a lot of companies out there that are going to be afraid to use the software just based off of that fact alone. A lot of people work themselves into having a job. And so, for a prime example, I've tried to erase legacy systems across our company in the past, and I've met with people who literally their job title is the piece of kit that you're trying to remove, and so therefore obviously they might be opposed to implementing Palantir or a different product. So you have these checks and balances sometimes in these organizations that you're going to hit when you're trying to unleash Palantir into your organization and say, no, that's not the most optimal way to do it. And meanwhile, they've never had the opportunity to actually use Palantir and understand its capability and its customizability to be able to create applications literally to define or defeat whatever problem you're trying to solve. And so it's pretty interesting. And it goes back to what Garcia was talking about. You know, there's some people that want to embrace that. They want to move into the 21st century. They really want to make sure that they're ahead of the competition. And in some places in our organization, we've been able to do that. But I think because of what you've seen in the past, the corruption that gets unraveled, the quality of product that you're able to get out of the customizable workflows that you put into Foundry or Gotham or wherever, you're going to unleash a lot of crap that your company's been hanging on to for quite some time. And some people might be okay with it. Some people might not be. So I think that it might have some CTOs shaking in their boots, and it might have some CTOs really fired up and excited to get moving into Karp's office and really figuring out to nail a deal and get it done.
Mm-hmm. Guys, do you think Palantir is doing a good job into explaining why it is important to go beyond chat?
I'll take that first. I think they are. I think the AIPCon even intro video kind of shows you why going beyond chat is important. I also think, again, a lot of people that are building these AI companies, the kind of core functionality is you put the data into a chatbot, interact with the chatbot. I think that's what all of us thought AIP was back in March of 2023. I don't think that's the case anymore. And so the reason I think they're doing a good job explaining this is because of the ontology discussion, that more and more people are starting to use that word. It's starting to like become the GPU that NVIDIA has made their word. Ontology is that for Palantir. But I think there's just going to need to be a lot more customer use cases constantly going viral to get people to really understand what it means for AIP to be integrated into the enterprise.
I mean, Palantir has been discussing this idea of, okay, like the LLM per se is not really valuable already more than a year ago. Do you remember that Karp interview at CNBC? It's like all the value lies in the convergence between your LLM, your business values, and like the real business. That is where the magic happens. And it seems only now someone is waking up. This is a clip that emerged just the other day from a Salesforce CEO talking about essentially AI agents that are not just chats.
A lot of companies are rolling out agents now, ServiceNow, Microsoft. How do we know this isn't just another buzzword like Copilot?
Well, I think and we all know now that Microsoft Copilot is basically the new Microsoft Clippy, that customers have not gotten value from it. You know, these LLMs, this is like, we're selling science projects to companies and they're tired of it. They have not gotten the value, which is why you see these customers so excited. They're coming here and they're getting immediate value, and they're able to use this next generation platform to do everything that they've heard that's possible. Create an agent is a great example. How do I fine tune an agent? How do I create guardrails for an agent? How do I ground an agent in data? Well, all the data is in the Salesforce platform. All of the metadata is there. The logic is there. The workflow is there. They're just adding agents into their existing workflow. And no one knew it was possible before the show. So we knew that because we hadn't created the product. And now it's so exciting because we've onboarded tens of thousands of customers. And we've convinced them you don't need to DIY your AI. You can just use, and you're going to get the best AI, the highest accuracy, the lowest hallucination rate. Our customers are saying in many cases it's 2x the accuracy of the best models.
So is Salesforce the competitor to Palantir that we haven't thought about? Is Benioff going for the throne here?
No, so I remember reading in the comments under that video, somebody said, Benioff is the final boss of steak dinners. And it was so good. It was so good, dude. I was dying, man. Because that's all I was thinking in my head. I was like, this guy is just saying all the right words. It looks like he's just been watching Alex Karp videos all day.
Literally the same. Yep.
And it just seems in his mind, he's like, what would Alex Karp say? What would Alex Karp say? And he's just saying that. But dude, hell no. Like I don't like it when they say, oh, some customers reported this. It could just be their 2 worst customers who had the absolute worst dog shit, what is AI, and all of a sudden they're twice as good, but they might still be crap. It's just they're improving from 0. So those numbers, they don't mean anything. The dude was just corporate speak, like it didn't mean anything really.
It was corporate speak with 0 emotion. Like when
Yeah.
Karp said that hydrocarbon analogy, and he's just like, he's
Yep.
just like flowing and explaining it. I got none of that. I got,
Yeah.
agents matter, AI is real. Give me a higher valuation on the stock, please. Arnie, what was your thoughts on the video?
Do you remember when Peter Thiel says, okay, when you start hearing buzzwords like run away, like that's the kind of vibe I got, because as you mentioned, yes, it was a well-articulated thought, but you can clearly see that that didn't really come from himself. It was like, okay, I'm playing a script that I need to perform because this is what people want to hear. This is what my investors in the board now, or private equities, are pushing me to do, because this is the way, like, Salesforce essentially needs to become a AI company, because that's what makes the company more valuable. So you have all the investors now, activist investors, trying to push Salesforce into that direction, and Salesforce and especially him needs to execute if he wants to keep the company there. I think what you mentioned, like the carp analogy, that it was if you want to do something beyond chat, crucial for your business, that raw knowledge needs to be processed. That hydrocarbon LLM is useless without the processing from AAP, Foundry, and Ontology. So it's not just AAP, it's not just Foundry, it's like the combination of what Palantir has been building that is extremely valuable. And it is not just, oh, you collect the metadata and you can unlock value. Like, that's deep into what Palantir has been building. And it's not just, oh yeah, you put some guardrails here and there. Like, you can clearly see that he's pretending more than delivering. And as Garcia mentioned, maybe there are just a couple of use cases that look good because the starting point was so bad, but that becomes a way to oversell, in the same way the C3 AI CEO tries to go stick dinnering with you. You have to choose one: steak dinner with Benioff or C3 AI guy.
I would agree. And if anyone saw his Olin interview with David Sachs, it was so corporate. I mean, you could tell the audience felt like they were being sold to the whole time. It was not exciting, but we'll see. I mean, numbers are going to talk in the next couple quarters. If Salesforce is growing right now, they're at 8%, 20% or something. All right, agent force is working, but
I mean,
think the
they
numbers are
might
not
for
gonna lie.
they might for a couple of quarters while customers are still processing the Kool-Aid juice. But I think give it a year and you'll see customers kind of going back to Palantir. They'll be like, hey, sorry, Alex Karp, we're back. So that's fine.
This reminds me of when I was in 9th grade. I went up to my debate coach and I quit debate to join the basketball team. Mind you, I ended up having a very successful career in debate, and I left to be a basketball player. And I came back to start a sophomore year. Mr. Austin was the name. I walked in the room. He was like, "You're back." I was like, "I'm not getting any taller." He was like, "All right." He embraced me. He's like, because my sister was a good debater and he knew that. So he thought it ran in the family. And I abandoned the activity for a year to try to be LeBron. And then I came back and he's like, "All right, let's get to work." So.
But look, do you notice how important it is what the Palantir is trying to achieve now with AIPCon, like what it was FoundryCon back then, having the leading clients of each vertical to showcase what they do? Because let's put it this way, we are two companies competing for market share. And okay, one company goes with Palantir and I'm down by go with Salesforce on or C3 AI. In 1 year, the value is unlocked or its value is not unlocked. Okay, if Palantir can, Palantir clients then can show, okay, this is the business value that you achieved. We improved our operation by 300%, saving millions. And you're like, we are still trying to implement.
We are working
our
with an
solution.
agent. We are working with an agent right now.
It's like that becomes striking evidence that Palantir is truly giving a competitive edge. I like to say that Palantir's advantage is measured by the competitive advantage that it gives to clients. And the more Palantir gives advantages, the more Palantir itself becomes more advantaged because it learns from the best of the best how they deploy software to unlock the business, the most valuable business cases, and that knowledge then enters into the knowledge of Palantir himself.
I agree.
One thing I want to add is while Salesforce is great with customer relationship management, CRM, right? I mean, they're not really taking into account any of the real things that drive value for a lot of organizations. You could say having AI in your customer relationship management can help, but I think that there's diminishing returns associated with that over time. And really where you're going to see the true step change in value is dealing with engineering problems, dealing with massive amounts of disparate data sets that can truly find new discoveries in medicine and cancer research and all these things that really Salesforce isn't a part of, right? You have to think that they're really focused specifically on a very small subset of data that's really pertaining strictly to customer relationships, whereas Palantir is endless in its capability. It isn't necessarily focused around sales. And in fact, it's probably the worst thing at Palantir is sales, as you guys are well aware of. That's a bad joke. But anyway, if you think about it, nobody's really focusing on specifically customer relationship. They're focusing on, what are the big problems that your corporation is trying to solve and actually removing those obstacles to be able to get it done. The companies are going after two completely different logistics. One is going after trying to implement AI into a very small subset of customer relationship management software. The other is trying to solve the world's problems.
Yep, I would agree. I think there's so many more verticals they can be attacking versus just the customer relationship element that CRM attacks. Go ahead, Arnie.
I'd like to share this post. Let me find it. Oh, okay. So we have one of the most important moments on the Palantir equity story because we got a sort of negative reaction from Gordon Johnson, the famous guy that keeps having a sell rating on Tesla since forever. Obviously not making like a good image of himself, just saying, oh, just watch the CEO of Palantir. It's me, or he cannot explain what the company does. I'm amazed by Maher keeps asking him what he does, but he doesn't seem to explain. And there was a great answer from Ted Mabray, so the global head of the commercial side, that had this paragraph that seems very interesting to me. Like, internally at Palantir, we rate deployment health by how closely the one-sentence description of what our software does aligns with clients, with a sentence description of what the institution does. This enforces alignment with our customers and ambition in our product development. BP produces oil and gas. Our software enables BP to produce more oil and gas more safely and cost efficiently. Airbus manufactures airplane. Our software enables more rapid and robust manufacturing of airplanes. The US military deters and punishes our enemy. Our software deters and punishes our enemies. Note, this is not an analytical platform, data warehouse, etc. The more you define yourself by a narrow capacity, the more parasitic you tuck. Like, that is a sort of boom, because all this software like Salesforce is very defined. Slack is very defined. Palantir is, we are software to unlock value. And the way the value is unlocked then is just a tool to unlock that value.
Right. No, I think it's really important, dude, because what Ted was saying in that post as well is Gordon Johnson, this guy who's had this $24 price target on Tesla, has always been antagonistic with Tesla, really not for any fundamental reason other than it helped build his brand to be antagonistic against Tesla, because then he would get all this attention, even if it was negative. That helped him get more clients and put more money in his pockets. And so I think he's looking at Palantir. He's seeing, okay, so You got a guy with a crazy hairdo, and he's on Bill Maher, and he's maybe not explaining the company the way you are accustomed to hearing a SaaS company be explained. And as a result, he doesn't understand why the stock is up 115% year to date. And what Ted was saying in that post is those types of people have consistently doubted Palantir. Even Karp mentioned in an earnings call a couple of quarters ago that these types of analysts, the Gordon Johnsons of the world, are like the generals in the army and the military that said to Palantir, your software is never going to work, or there's no way, the government would ever buy it. And now you've got those same people coming to AIPCon to present on how the software is working, just like these analysts eventually will have to change their tone. So it's just so interesting to see that 180 from either the analyst community or from the government officials. And I think that's only going to keep happening more and more and more once our boy Rishi finally changes. Maybe that'll be the top, but it's happening. It's happening more and more.
But yeah, and that kind of reiterates my favorite Karp quote. I wish I could find the video. Maybe John could find it one day. I'll shoot him a message. But I don't know if it was during an earnings call or if it was during a conference. But Alex Karp said, "We are the ones that are most aligned to your company's goals. To your company's, so." Alex Karp reiterating, like, we are the company that is going to be the most aligned. It's not about extracting as much money as we can from you. It's like, what are your goals? We're going to help you reach those goals better, faster, more cost effectively. And they've proven that, and they've always shown that, like they show that with every customer that every client, every partner that they're with. So, I mean, they'll just stay aligned with their partners, the whole way through.
Right.
So,
all right, we have 350 people here at 12:54 a.m. on the East Coast, 11 on Central, 9 in Pacific, around the world. I don't even know what time it is. I can't believe everyone's here. 2 years ago, there was like 40 people here. There's a lot more people here. It's because you all care about Palantir, and a lot of you are getting rich along the way with everyone invested in Palantir. But to end off the show, we've got someone who doesn't really like Palantir for a variety of reasons. Let's see what he had to say this week.
Since Palantir Technologies has partnered up with Nebraska Medicine, is Palantir a buy?
All right, Palantir is a cold stock. It is a meme stock. It is a stock that has momentum because individual investors keep piling into it. It is not really even a stock. It is just a barometer of enthusiasm of some business that may or may not be doing well. I wish there were more to it. Let's go to Mark in California. Mark.
Garcia, your thoughts?
Yeah, I fucking love it. Like hate on it more, please. Ross Gerber doesn't like it. Gordon Johnson doesn't like it. Jim Cramer doesn't like it. I fucking love it. I love it. And Kathy Woods is selling too. So it's just like you have all these things, going for us. I personally love it. So it's just, and isn't he like someone who's like, if you're watching these shows and you're actually doing what he's saying during the show, you're going to underperform the market by a lot. I don't know who did that study, but I'm pretty sure they did that, where they tracked if you bought when he said to buy, if you sold when he said to sell, you would have been underperforming. So, I mean, it's just another reason, to be bullish. Yeah, like Doom is saying, it's going to go to the moon now. So
I think Kramer is upset because Snowflake and some of these others and Mark Benioff join his show all the time. And if you look at Snowflake's year-to-date return, Salesforce's year-to-date return, and then Palantir's year-to-date return, the black box stock that's a cult that the CEO doesn't go on his show or give him the time of day, there's a massive divergence. So if you were listening to Kramer all year and you bought Snowflake and Salesforce because they come on his show every quarter, right, and he accesses a lot of people, and you didn't listen to someone like Arnie or Matt or Garcia or myself on YouTube, you're underperforming. And it's ironic because Jim Cramer's supposed to be for the little guy. He's supposed to be for the retail investor, the guy that's just, out there on an island, but he has all these corporate CEOs and he backs them, which kind of shows the toxic relationship he has in that world. And it leads to him being pretty jealous about Palantir.
I mean,
Arnie?
and that's our alpha, isn't it? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, you're right. Finish that thought. That's our alpha.
But that's our alpha, is that we are taking the time to research this company on our own. Like, we're not waiting for CNBC, MSNBC to say, oh yeah, Palantir stock is a buy. We did the research. We know something that people don't know. You guys should start buying it, before everybody gets in. So that's them misunderstanding the company as our alpha, like as long as the Gordon Johnsons of the world will keep spreading more FUD and people, the average investor still thinks that Palantir is a meme stock and that they're just a fake software company. I mean, hey, that's going to be more alpha for us when inevitably 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, everybody's going to be saying, oh, wow, we should have been buying it. It was like Apple in the 2000s or Amazon in the 2000s. And we'll get to say, yeah, like we knew it and we're still holding on to the shares. So
Guys, I struggle to understand one thing. Do you remember that last year, it was more or less a year ago, Kramer said, Palantir is not a stock, it's a bunch of press releases. And I wonder, is this a sort of an upgrade?
I don't know.
Sorry, my thing was
I
muted.
think
Yeah,
so.
it's
I
a
think
little
it's an
bit of an
upgrade.
upgrade. I have some of the tweets that he said in the past. I'm doing this quick search right here. You guys can see he has been wildly inconsistent on his Palantir. So on November 6, 2023, he said, I am on the Palantir train. I am Mr. Palantir as far as I'm concerned. So he was kind of bullish in November 2023. And then April 11th, he says he likes Palantir. He thinks it's going to 28. Then February 6th, he said Palantir is a buy. And then I think in 2022, he said he hates Palantir. We'll have to find those quotes. But now it's weird because you said it was a buy in April. You liked it going to 28. And now you called yourself Mr. Palantir. And now it's a cult stock after it's up 115%. Like, I think he never leaned into some of the positive comments he had on Palantir, never made it a staple of his kind of investment club or whatever. And as a result, he feel like he missed it. So he has to tell his viewers, hey, it's okay that we missed Palantir because Palantir is a cult stock. But maybe it's not. Matt, what were your thoughts on Jim Cramer?
I think you have to take what Jim says with a grain of salt because he used to be in the hedge fund world. And he more so trades things on a couple week time horizon at best. He's not looking at it like how the majority of us in this room are looking at it, where we're seeing it as the true potential undertaker of, let's say, the future of Microsoft operating systems or other operating systems that are out there. And I wanted to add, I think a really good thing to consider is instead of, how Salesforce calls themselves CRM, customer relationship management software, you could call Palantir PRM, which is partner relationship management. And they'll build any sort of clients or partners software for any sort of way or shape or form that you see fit. As long as they're managing that particular partner's outcomes, they'll do whatever the hell they need to do.
Yep, I would agree. All right, I think that's it for us. Nice 2-hour episode. Took a couple weeks off. We are back. We'll be back next week, every single week, to discuss one of the most amazing companies in the world that has made a lot of people a lot of money this year, and that has also put this community together to discuss and have all the inside memes and jokes that we have and get to keep going on this ride. And I think this ride is just getting started. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Real quick, Garcia is trying to get to 1,000 subs on his channel. So there's 350 people here. I think he's like 40 subs away. If you please could subscribe to that channel right there.
Dude, that would be cool.
That would be awesome.
It's almost there. Almost there.
It would be great to support everyone. The more subscribers he has, the more content he can make, the more analysis he can give on the macro, stocks, Palantir, all that good stuff. And the more we can keep building out this community. So thank you, everybody. Everyone's links are in the description as well. Mm-hmm. And we'll see you back next week on Palantir Weekly.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, guys.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, guys.